The night sky was heavy with smoke, and the stars above were hidden by the glow of burning fires. In the middle of a distant alien city, there was a place called the Market of Chains. It was not a normal market of food or clothes. It was a cruel market where living beings were sold like objects. Cages lined the streets, chains rattled, and voices of merchants shouted prices as if lives had no value. Alien creatures of many kinds stood behind iron bars, their eyes dull, their skin scarred, their spirits broken. Some were tall and strong, others were small and weak, but all of them wore heavy collars of metal around their necks. Buyers walked past laughing, bargaining, counting coins, choosing slaves like cattle. In the middle of this noise, a young alien girl sat silently in her cage. She was thin, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes strange, not like the others. They held a glow, faint but sharp, as if a hidden fire lived inside them. She did not cry. She did not speak. She only sat in silence while others shouted around her. Her price tag was a joke to the merchants, just $1, only a single coin. They called her worthless, broken, useless. They said she had no strength, no skill, nothing to give. The crowd laughed every time someone looked at her cage. $1, the merchant would say. Take her or leave her. Even her chains cost more than her, but no one bought her. No one wanted her. To the crowd, she was not even worth the iron that locked her down. Then came the human. He walked into the Market of Chains with calm steps. Unlike the other buyers, he was not loud. He did not laugh. He did not push slaves or argue with merchants. His eyes moved slowly from cage to cage, watching, thinking, not judging. He was tall, wearing a rough jacket from long travel, dust clinging to his boots. His face was tired, but his eyes were sharp. He looked like a soldier or a wanderer, someone who had seen too much of war and loss. When he passed the cage of the young girl, something stopped him. He looked again, his eyes narrowed. He did not see a worthless creature. He saw something different. He saw the silence in her eyes, the fire that the crowd could not understand. The merchant noticed his gaze and laughed. This one? Worthless, broken, no use at all. I will sell her for $1, the cheapest slave in the market. Maybe she will clean your floor, maybe she will die in a day. No refund. The merchant laughed again. The human did not answer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small coin. The sound of metal in his hand made the merchant's eyes widen. The crowd turned. They could not believe what they were seeing. No one had touched her cage for months. No one had cared. You want this one? The merchant mocked. For $1? You waste your money, human. You could buy a strong worker or a fighter, but you choose this weak thing. The human gave him the coin. I choose her, he said simply, his voice calm, steady, not asking, not doubting. The crowd burst into laughter. Some shouted insults. Some clapped their hands as if watching a fool's play. The human bought trash, they jeered. A useless girl for $1 coin, what a joke. What a waste, but the human ignored them. The chains were unlocked, the cage door opened. For the first time in years, the girl stepped out. Her legs weak, but her eyes steady. She looked at the human, not with fear, not with hope, but with confusion. No one had ever looked at her the way he did, not as property, but as someone. He put a hand on her shoulder gently, guiding her away from the noise, away from the laughter. The merchant shouted behind him, Don't come back crying, human. She is nothing. She is worthless. The human did not turn back. He kept walking. The girl followed quietly, her bare feet touching the cold stones of the street. As they left the Market of Chains, the smoke and fire behind them, the girl whispered her first words, so soft that only he could hear. Why? The human glanced at her, his voice low. Because no one else did. The girl said nothing more. But deep in her silent eyes, the faint glow flickered brighter, like a secret waiting to be revealed. And so it began, with $1 coin, one choice, and one girl that the galaxy had thrown away. But sometimes the smallest price can open the greatest story, and sometimes a human's choice can change everything. The city was still awake when the human walked out of the Market of Chains. Torches burned on tall poles, smoke rose from the alleys, and the laughter of cruel merchants echoed behind him. The girl followed silently. Her bare feet touched the cold ground, but her steps made no sound. She was like a shadow beside him. People in the streets turned their heads to watch. Some whispered, some smirked, some spat on the ground. It was not normal for a human to buy a slave in this place, especially not one that was mocked as worthless. To the crowd, he looked like a fool who had wasted a coin. The human ignored them. His mind was calm, but his thoughts were deep. Why had he bought her? Even he was not sure. He told himself it was mercy, but inside he felt something else. He had seen something in her eyes, something that did not belong in a cage. The girl walked close, but not too close. Her chains were removed, but her wrists still carried the marks of metal. She held her hands together as if she still feared punishment. She did not speak. Her face was blank, her silence was heavy. Finally, the human stopped in a quieter street. He turned to her. "What is your name?" he asked. The girl looked at him. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She lowered her head. She was not used to being asked her name. Slaves were numbers, property, not people. He sighed. "If you do not want to speak, that is fine. You are free to keep it. At least for now." The word free made her eyes twitch. But she stayed silent. She did not trust him yet. She had been beaten before by masters who promised kindness. He led her to a small inn at the edge of the city. The keeper frowned at the sight of the girl, but the human paid in full. No one argued with silver in the room. The human gave her food, bread, and water. She ate slowly, like someone afraid it might be taken away. He watched her carefully. "I do not know who you are," he said, "but I saw something in your eyes, something alive. Maybe that is why I chose you." The girl paused, a crumb on her lips. She stared at him, but still she did not answer. When night fell, the city outside grew louder with music and fighting. The inn shook with voices and footsteps, but inside their small room it was quiet. The human leaned back on his chair, his hand on his sidearm, his eyes half closed. The girl sat near the window. Staring at the stars, her chains were gone, but her mind was still bound. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Why?" The human opened his eyes. "Why what? Why? Choose me." Her voice was hoarse, like it had not been used in years, but it carried a strange weight. He looked at her for a long time, then said, "Because no one else did, because I do not believe anyone is worthless." Her face tightened. As if his words hurt her, she turned away, her glowing eyes reflecting the starlight. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then, without warning, she asked, "Do you know what they call me?" The human shook his head. "No, they call me cursed," she whispered. "They say anyone who keeps me will lose everything. That is why my price is 1 coin. The human leaned forward, his voice steady. "Do you believe that?" She shook her head slowly. "I do not believe. I only survive." The human gave a small smile. "Then we will survive together." Her eyes widened slightly, confusion in her face. No one had ever spoken like that to her. But deep in the night, when the inn was silent, the girl's glow in her eyes grew brighter. She stared at her own hands. Trembling, she remembered chains, pain, screams, and fire. She remembered why she was sold so cheap. In her dreams, she saw shadows of soldiers. Alien masters who feared her, who whispered about her power. They had marked her as dangerous. Yet here she was, bought for a single coin. The human did not know yet, but his choice had placed him in the path of a storm. Enemies would come, hunters would follow, and the secret inside the girl would not stay hidden. At dawn, the city bells rang. The market opened again, and outside their window, soldiers marched past. The girl froze, her body shaking. The human noticed. "What is it?" he asked. She whispered, "They are looking for me." Her voice cracked for the first time. Fear mixed with something darker. The human placed his hand on his weapon, his eyes calm but sharp. "Then they will find me first," he said. The girl stared at him. The faint fire in her eyes flickered brighter. She did not understand him, but she felt something she had never felt before. Safety in the market of chains. She was worth $1 in the human's choice. She was worth risking everything, and that was only the beginning. The road stretched far from the city, dust rising with every step. The human walked with steady pace. His pack on his shoulder, the girl followed behind, her small frame almost lost in the wide emptiness of the land. She said nothing, her lips pressed tight, her eyes low. Silence wrapped around her like a second skin. She did not complain. She did not ask questions, she only walked. The human glanced back at her from time to time. "You can walk beside me," he said once. "You don't have to follow like a prisoner." But she only shook her head. Keeping her distance, her silence was heavy. It was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of someone who carried chains inside. Even though her wrists were free, her spirit was still locked. By sunset, they reached a ruined outpost. Walls broken, roof half gone, the human set down his pack, started a fire, and shared bread with her. She ate slowly, each bite careful, as if food was still a privilege she was not allowed to trust. The human spoke while she stayed quiet. He talked of stars, of planets he had seen, of the wars that scarred the galaxy. His voice calm, steady, like someone telling a story to fill the silence. But she never replied. Her eyes stared into the fire. When the night deepened, the wind howled through the ruins. The human leaned against a wall, his weapon near, his eyes heavy. He was close to sleep when he heard it. A whisper, faint, broken, but real. Why? His eyes opened. He saw her sitting close to the fire, her arms wrapped around her knees, her eyes glowing faintly in the flames. Why what? He asked, his voice soft. She did not look at him, her eyes fixed on the fire. Why? Did you not leave me there? He watched her for a long moment. Because I don't leave people in cages. Her lips trembled. She lowered her head. You don't understand, she whispered. I am not safe. You should have left me. They will come for me, and when they do, you will suffer. The human leaned forward, his tone steady. Maybe they will, but that is my choice. Her eyes flickered toward him, confusion and fear mixing together. She had never heard words like that before. Not from anyone. She turned her face away, her voice shaking. I cannot be trusted. They say I am cursed. The human smiled faintly. I don't believe in curses, only choices. Silence returned. But it was different now, less empty, more fragile, like a glass that could break with a single touch. Later, when the human drifted into sleep, the girl stayed awake. She stared at the stars through the broken roof, her eyes glowing brighter, memories flooding her mind. She remembered chains, not only of iron but of fire. She remembered scientists and masters, voices cold and cruel. She is unstable, they had said. She must be contained. They had branded her dangerous, a threat. And in fear they had sold her cheap, hoping no one would keep her alive. Her breath shook. She pressed her hands to her face. She wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Only silence, always silence. But inside her chest something moved. A power she had hidden for years. Something that burned, waiting. Suddenly a noise came from the darkness. Footsteps on broken stone. The girl froze, her eyes sharp. Shadows moved between the ruins. Armed figures creeping closer. She whispered urgently. Wake up. The human opened his eyes at once. His hand on his weapon, he heard it too. The shuffle of boots, the faint click of metal bounty hunters. The girl's breath quickened, her whole body shook. They found me, she whispered, her voice cracked. The human stood, pulling her behind him, his eyes scanning the shadows. Stay close, he said. Figures stepped into the firelight. Armored, masked, weapons raised. One of them laughed. Hand her over, human, and maybe we let you live. The human kept his weapon steady, his voice calm. She's not yours. The hunters laughed. She's not yours either. She's worth nothing. Yet she's wanted everywhere. Don't you know what she is? The girl's eyes widened, fear filling her face. She whispered, Don't listen to them, please. The human did not move, his voice sharp. I don't care what she is. I won't hand her over. The hunters raised their weapons, but before they could strike, something happened. The firelight bent, the air thickened, and the girl's eyes glowed like burning stars. The hunters froze. Their laughter stopped. The girl trembled, her voice breaking. No, not again. The ground shook with her power. Stones cracked, the air burned. The hunters shouted in fear. Some stumbling back, the human turned to her. Not with fear, but with steady eyes. You're not cursed, he said. You're powerful, and that's why they fear you. Her breath came fast, the glow dimming as she forced it back down. Tears sliding down her face, she whispered, I don't want to be this. He stepped closer, his hand on her shoulder. You're not a curse. You're not worthless. You are more than what they said. The hunters fled into the night, their courage broken by what they saw. The girl fell to her knees, shaking, silent again. But this time her silence was not emptiness. It was pain. The human stayed beside her, guarding her through the night, his choice now heavier than ever. He had chosen her for one coin, but now he understood. She was not just a girl. She was a storm hidden in silence, and storms always change the world. The morning after the hunters fled, the ruins were quiet. The fire had turned to ash. The girl sat with her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes lowered, her body trembling from the memory of what she had unleashed. The human watched her carefully. He had seen many things in his life, but nothing like her. She was small and fragile, yet inside her was power strong enough to shatter stone. He did not fear her, but he understood now why the galaxy did. He knelt beside her, his voice calm. You saved us. Her head shook quickly, her voice breaking. No, I almost destroyed everything. I cannot control it. They are right. I am dangerous. The human placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Dangerous to them, not to me. She looked up, her glowing eyes wet with tears. Why do you trust me? Why not run? Why not sell me? You could be rich, the human smiled faintly. Because I didn't buy you to sell you. I bought you to give you a chance. Maybe your first chance at freedom. The word freedom lingered in the air like something holy. The girl closed her eyes as if afraid to believe it. They left the ruins together, traveling across empty plains and through valleys of red stone. But freedom was not simple. Freedom carried a price. By midday, ships passed overhead, their shadows crawling across the ground. Banners of the alien empire painted on their hulls. The girl froze at the sight. Her breath caught in her throat. They are searching for me, she whispered, her voice trembling. They will never stop. The human looked at the sky. His jaw set. Then we keep moving. Freedom always has a cost. And sometimes it is paid in blood, the girl shivered. But followed him, her silence heavier than before. They reached a small settlement by nightfall. Broken houses made from scrap metal. People who lived in fear of the empire. The human traded some of his gear for food and fuel, but whispers followed them. People looked at the girl, their eyes filled with suspicion, as if they could sense the fire inside her. An old woman approached, her voice low. That girl, you must hide her. The empire hunts for her kind. They call her the marked one. The human's eyes narrowed. Why? The woman shook her head. I do not know, only that her blood carries something they fear. She is worth more than planets. Yet they sold her for nothing so no one would guess. The girl lowered her head. Shame burning in her chest, she wanted to speak, to explain, but fear locked her tongue. That night in the settlement, soldiers arrived, armored and cruel, their leader shouting orders. Search every house. Find the girl. The human grabbed her hand, pulling her through narrow alleys, their footsteps soft against the metal ground. Torches and weapons flashed behind them. Shouts grew louder. The girl whispered, You should leave me if they catch me. They will kill you too. But the human tightened his grip, his voice sharp. Freedom has a price, and I am willing to pay it. They ran until they reached the edge of the settlement, but soldiers blocked their path. Weapons raised, the leader stepped forward, his face twisted with arrogance. Hand her over, human, and I may let you live. The girl stepped forward, tears in her glowing eyes. I will go. Don't hurt him. But the human stood in front of her, his weapon drawn, his voice steady. No, if you want her, you go through me. The soldiers laughed, thinking him a fool. But the girl's chest burned with something new. Not fear, not shame, but a spark of strength. Someone was willing to stand for her. Not because of power, not because of money, but because of choice. Her hands trembled, the glow in her eyes brighter than ever. The soldiers froze, fear cutting through their arrogance. The leader sneered, Control yourself, girl, or you will destroy him too. But the human glanced back at her, his voice calm. Trust yourself. You are not a curse, you are not their slave. You are free. The girl's tears fell, but her power steadied, the air hummed. The soldiers stumbled back, weapons shaking in their hands. The leader shouted, Fall back, she will burn us all. They fled into the night, leaving the human and the girl alone at the edge of the settlement. Her knees gave out, she collapsed into the dirt, whispering, I don't understand, why risk everything for me? The human knelt beside her, his voice low, because freedom is worth everything. And you deserve it even if the galaxy says otherwise. For the first time, the girl's silence broke not with fear, but with a fragile sound, a sob mixed with relief. She had lived her life in chains, her price only one coin, but now she began to see the truth. The price of freedom was far greater, and the human had already chosen to pay it. The road ahead was darker than ever. Hunters, soldiers, and empires would come for them, but something had already changed. For the first time, she was not walking behind. She walked beside him step for step, and in her silence, a storm was gathering, waiting for the moment to break. The night sky burned with strange lights. Ships crossed above the plains like metal predators. Search beams cut through the darkness. The human and the girl hid in the shadow of jagged rocks, the air thick with tension. For days they had been hunted, every step tracked by the Empire's soldiers. The girl's silence had turned heavier, but her eyes glowed brighter with each escape. She knew the Empire would not stop. Not until she was back in their cages, or destroyed. The human crouched beside her, scanning the horizon, his weapon ready. They will find us soon, he said, his voice steady. When they do, we stand. The girl's breath shook. You don't understand. If they take me, they will tear apart every world. They will use me to control millions. I cannot let that happen. The human turned to her, his eyes sharp. Then we fight. Together, her lips trembled, she lowered her head. I am not strong enough. You are stronger than you believe, he answered. They fear you for a reason. Before she could reply, the ground shook, engines roared, and a column of armored soldiers marched into the valley, weapons glowing in the dark. At the center stood a warlord of the empire, tall, cruel, his armor marked with the symbols of conquest. His voice boomed across the valley. Return the girl, human. She is not yours. She belongs to the empire. Her blood is ours. Her life is ours. The girl stepped back, her body shaking. She whispered, They will kill you. But the human stepped forward, his weapon raised, his voice calm. She is not yours. She is not anyone's. She is free. The soldiers laughed. Their armor clattering, the warlord sneered. A single human against an army. You are mad. The human's eyes narrowed. Maybe, he said, but freedom is worth madness. The warlord raised his hand. Soldiers aimed their weapons, fire lit the valley. Explosions tore the rocks apart. The human dove for cover, returning fire with precision. Every shot hitting its mark. The girl cried out, her eyes burning. Her power pulling at her chest, she tried to hold it back, afraid it would destroy him too. But when she saw him surrounded, blood on his shoulder, fighting alone, something inside her broke, she screamed, the sound shaking the air. Light poured from her eyes and hands. Chains of fire burst from the ground, wrapping around the soldiers, weapons melted, armor cracked. The warlord staggered, shouting in rage. The soldiers fell to their knees, choking in terror. The cursed one, they cried, the storm. The girl stood tall for the first time, her hair lifted by invisible winds, her chains of energy snapping outward. She was no longer silent, no longer bowed, she was a force. But her power burned her too. Her body trembling, her voice breaking. I cannot stop it. The human rushed to her side, grabbing her shoulders. His voice firm. You can, you are not a curse. You are not a weapon, you are you, hold on to that. Her glowing eyes locked with his. For a moment she steadied, the wild storm calming. She drew the chains back, releasing the soldiers. Leaving them broken but alive, the warlord roared, charging forward with his blade. The human blocked him, steel clashing against steel, sparks flying. The fight was brutal, the warlord stronger, but the human faster, his strike sharp, his will unshaken. The girl watched, her breath ragged, she whispered, Don't die. With a final strike, the human disarmed the warlord. Sending his weapon to the dirt, the warlord staggered back. Fear flashing in his eyes, he shouted for retreat. The soldiers dragged him away. Ships lifted into the sky, leaving smoke and silence. The girl fell to her knees, her body shaking. Tears running down her face. I almost lost myself. I almost lost you. The human knelt beside her. His voice soft. But you didn't. You chose. You controlled it. That means you are not what they say. You are more. She pressed her forehead to the dirt, whispering, Why do you keep saving me? Why risk everything? He looked at her with calm eyes. Because chains were made to be broken, and war begins when someone dares to say no. I choose to say no. The girl stared at him, her silence now filled with something new. Respect, trust, even a spark of hope far above. The Empire's ships regrouped, their message clear. The girl was no longer just a runaway slave. She was a symbol, a spark of rebellion, and the human was her shield. The war had begun, and neither chains nor fear could hold them now. The valley lay silent after the battle, smoke drifting into the sky, broken weapons scattered across the ground. The girl sat in the dust, her breath shallow, her eyes dim. She had given everything to hold back her storm. The human stood beside her, blood staining his jacket, his weapon heavy in his hand, but his eyes remained steady. He looked at her, not with fear, but with unshaken trust. You are safe, he said, his voice calm. As long as I stand, the girl shook her head, tears sliding down her face. No, I am not safe. You are not safe. They will never stop. The Empire will send more, stronger, endless. I should leave before you are destroyed too. But the human crouched, meeting her glowing eyes. Listen to me, you are not a curse. You are not alone. They want you broken, they want you afraid. But I will not let them win. Her lips trembled. Why risk yourself for me? I was worth 1 coin. I am not worth your life. The human gave a faint smile, the kind of smile that carried scars. Because sometimes 1 coin can change the whole galaxy. The girl's breath caught, her silence deep. She looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. Days passed. They traveled through mountains and deserts, hunted by drones, tracked by soldiers, every step heavier. Yet the human never wavered when she stumbled. He lifted her when she broke, he stood taller, When the storm inside her threatened to consume her, he reminded her of who she was. At night, when the stars burned above, she whispered, "You will die for me." "Won't you?" he answered without hesitation. "If I must," her chest tightened, her silence heavy with pain. No one had ever chosen her before. No one had ever stood for her. Soon the news spread. Whispers across colonies and stations. A human protects the cursed girl. Some mocked him, some feared him, but some began to hope. Rebels hiding in shadows spoke his name. Traitors whispered about his stand. Even slaves in far-off worlds dreamed of the girl with glowing eyes who was not broken. The Empire grew furious. They sent envoys to threaten him, soldiers to capture him, even traitors among humans to turn him in. One night in a ruined city, a group of human mercenaries surrounded them. Their leader smirked. "Hand her over, brother. She is not worth your death. You fight for nothing." The human stood tall, his weapon steady. "I fight for freedom." The mercenaries laughed. "Freedom does not feed you. Freedom does not protect you. Why throw away your life for a slave worth a single coin?" The human's eyes sharpened, his voice like stone. "Because her worth is not in coin. Her worth is in choice. And I choose to stand." The girl watched him, her heart trembling. His words cut through the chains still wrapped inside her. The mercenaries attacked, but he did not back down. His stance firm, his strikes precise. Even when outnumbered, he stood like a wall, unbroken. The girl felt her power rise again, the storm pressing against her skin, but this time she did not fear it. She whispered to herself, "If he stands for me, then I must stand for him." Her glow returned. Steady, not wild, not broken, the storm obeyed her. Light wrapped around her like armor. The mercenaries fled in terror, shouting about demons. When the fight ended, the girl collapsed, exhausted but alive. The human caught her before she fell, his arms steady. "You controlled it," he whispered, pride in his voice. "You are stronger than you know." Tears filled her eyes. "Only because you believed." The road ahead grew darker. The Empire prepared armies. Their leaders swore to crush the rebellion before it spread. But in every corner of the galaxy, stories spread of the human who stood tall, and the girl who broke her chains. The Empire had called her worthless, cursed, dangerous. But now she was something more. She was hope. And the human was the shield that carried that hope. On a quiet night, the girl asked him softly, "What if they kill you? What if I lose you?" He looked at the stars, his voice calm. "Then I will still stand even in death, because sometimes standing once is enough to change everything." Her silence broke with a sob, but it was not the silence of despair anymore. It was the silence of someone who had found something worth fighting for. And as the night wind carried the sound of distant ships, the human stood tall, his shadow cast long beside hers. Unbroken, unyielding, the galaxy trembled. For one coin had bought not a slave, but a spark, and sparks could burn empires. The galaxy stirred like a storm before lightning. Rumors spread faster than ships. Whispers moved from market stalls to hidden rebel camps, from slaves in chains to soldiers in armor. They all spoke of the girl once worth a single coin, and the human who chose her. The Empire watched with growing rage. Their generals slammed fists against tables. Their rulers shouted in fear. She was worthless, they said. Yet she has become a symbol, and symbols are dangerous. The human and the girl traveled across broken lands and shadowed stars. Every step hunted, every choice heavy, yet with each battle, with each stand, more eyes began to turn toward them. Slaves looked at their collars and dreamed of breaking them. Rebels sharpened their blades with new purpose. Even ordinary people whispered, "If a human can stand for her, maybe we can stand too." The girl walked beside him now, no longer trailing behind. Her silence still deep but no longer empty. It carried strength, fire, and a quiet promise. They reached a hidden colony on the edge of Empire space, a place where fugitives and rebels gathered. When they entered, all eyes turned. Men and women bowed their heads, not in fear but in respect. An old rebel leader approached, his voice rough. "We have heard of you, human. We have heard of her, the girl who was sold for one coin. You must understand, you are no longer only fugitives. You are a beacon," the human frowned. "I am no leader," the leader smiled. "Perhaps not, but you are a stand. And sometimes a single stand is stronger than 1,000 armies." The girl listened in silence. Her eyes glowing faintly, she whispered to herself, "A beacon," as if testing the word, but the Empire did not wait. Their ships descended upon the colony like falling stars. Fire rained down. Soldiers marched with banners of conquest. Their voices thundered, Surrender the girl, or be destroyed. The rebels turned to the human, their faces pale, their hands shaking. Some wanted to run. Some wanted to hand her over. The girl stepped forward, her voice steady. I will go, I will give myself. Better me than all of you. But the human placed his hand on her shoulder, shaking his head. No, you are not theirs. Not anymore, she trembled. If I stay, they will all die. His eyes locked with hers, strong and unbroken. Then we make a choice. Not of surrender, but of defiance we stand. The colony prepared, walls reinforced, weapons loaded, hearts heavy with fear. Yet the sight of the human standing tall, the girl at his side, gave them courage. The Empire attacked, ships roaring, soldiers pouring into the valley. Fire lit the sky. The ground shook. The human fought with skill and fury, his blade striking true, his rifle never missing. He was one man, but he stood like an army. The girl closed her eyes, drawing the storm inside her. Not wild, not broken, but steady. Chains of fire burst around her, walls of light shielding the rebels. Her voice echoed through the battlefield. We are not slaves, we are not curses, we are free. The soldiers faltered. Fear in their eyes, their warlord roared. She is a weapon, she is ours. But the human's voice thundered back. She is not a weapon, she is not yours, she is worth more than your empire. And she was bought for only one coin. The word struck deeper than any blade. The rebels roared. Hope ignited, they fought with new strength. The Empire's forces broke under the storm, their ships burning, their soldiers fleeing, the warlord slain beneath the human's hand. When the smoke cleared, the colony still stood. Scarred but alive, the rebels gathered, their voices rising. Freedom, they cried. Freedom. The girl stood in the center, her chains broken forever. Her silence now a voice for all who could not speak. She turned to the human, tears in her glowing eyes. I was worth $1, and yet you gave me everything. Why? He smiled, weary but unbroken. Because sometimes the smallest choice changes the greatest story. Sometimes the weakest chain breaks the strongest empire. And sometimes one coin buys freedom for more than one soul. Her tears fell not of despair, but of something she had never felt before, belonging. The galaxy would remember her as the storm, the cursed one who became a symbol. But she would remember herself as the girl a human chose, not for power, not for gain, but for worth. And the galaxy would remember him, the human who stood tall, who chose defiance when surrender was easy, who paid one coin and bought a spark that burned empires. Together they walked into the future side by side, no longer slave and savior, but equals, a symbol and a shield. And so the tale spread across the stars, told in whispers and songs. Her price was one coin, but her freedom was priceless, and the human who chose her changed everything. The story ended not with chains, but with choice, not with silence, but with hope. The one art had changed the galaxy forever.